fellow. And basically what that means is that I have been granted a contract through the U.S. State Department Office of English Language Programs to be here. I am a professional teacher and also a teacher trainer. I've been teaching for around 15 or so years, and I've been doing teacher training for around 7, I would say. 6 or 7, something like that. And I have worked all over the world. I've taught in Russia, I've taught in China, in several different areas of China. I've taught in Bulgaria, and then I've obviously worked here in Ukraine. In terms of, in the US, I also taught. In terms of teacher training, I've done work in Taiwan, in Mexico, also in Russia, here in Ukraine, in Georgia, in Azerbaijan, in Pakistan and Afghanistan. I also taught in Afghanistan, almost forgot that. And that's enough. Okay, so today we're going to talk about grammar games. And we're going to talk about how to integrate them into the classroom to make the learning of grammar a little bit more communicative, because that's always difficult, as I'm sure you all well know, either from being a student or from being a teacher trying to teach students grammar in a communicative way. So we're going to start by looking at 4 different quotes from a book. Which ones do you agree with? And which ones do you not agree with, and why? The first quote is, students need to be given details of grammar rules if they are to learn English successfully. The second is, children do not learn grammar rules when they acquire their first language, so adults don't need to either. Third is, if students get enough chance to practice using a language, they don't need to learn grammar. And the fourth is, it is helpful for students to be aware of grammatical information about the language. Okay, so who has thoughts? Don't be intimidated by the amount of people here. It is a full house, you're absolutely right. Were you saying the fourth? Yeah? So you agree or disagree with the fourth? You agree, okay. It is helpful for students to be aware of grammatical information about the language. Okay, why?
Because it is impossible to learn a foreign language without any grammar. Not the first is also correct, but to overload students with details of grammar, if they aren't going to become professional linguists, I think it isn't worth.
Okay, all right. Can anyone add to those explanations for why number 1 and number 4 are reasonable statements?
And it's a slow method. If you learn grammar in detail, it takes a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
And when you feel that you know the language, there is no time to use it because you're an old person.
All right, good. So being aware that we also need to practice to engage in producing the language outside of grammar activities is also very important. Great. What else can we add to 1 and 4? Think about ages as well. Is there an appropriate time to teach more grammar or less grammar according to age?
Of course. Children don't need to be taught grammar in details. They associate lots of things. So you just show the apple, give me, they will try to associate even verbs, other parts of the language, but they don't need grammar.
Okay, all right, and sometimes it actually hinders them. If you're teaching too much grammar, sometimes they do need it, but you mentioned that, but
No,
not
so
detailed. Okay, good. Did someone have their hand up? No. You were just waving at your friend who arrived, maybe. Okay. What about adults?
It depends on their desire actually. If they want to be professionals,
Mm-hmm.
then they need to study grammar.
Okay. Hello. Hi. Hi guys. Yeah, there's some seats here. Someone can also take this chair. No need for it to be facing back at everybody. Okay, nice. Anybody else? Anything you can add?
I can add that adults love playing games as well as
Absolutely. Right now I'm studying Russian, and when my teacher starts playing games, I get really happy. Because I really don't like the tedious grammar learning section, but when we have a game, it's awesome. Okay, and I learn better. All right. Okay, so next question. What's the difference between covert and overt? What's the difference between those two words?
Something
You,
is
hey. No cheating, you were here yesterday. Okay.
I didn't know these words.
So covert is something that's not obvious. That is correct. It's something that is hidden. I was telling them as a joke yesterday, the way that I remember covert is because I watch a lot of spy movies and television shows. And they always have covert operations where, you know, they're having to do something in a hidden way. Okay? And overt would be the opposite, right? So that's something that's obvious. I put the O with overt with obvious. Okay, so we have two different methods of teaching grammar. We have a covert way and we have an overt way. So if we were to think about how we teach grammar in a covert or a hidden way, can anyone in our wonderfully large audience tell us how you might teach grammar in a hidden or covert way? What does that look like? What kind of activities would you use? Games. Okay. Anything else?
maybe puzzles.
Puzzles.
Topics.
Topics. Okay, tell me a little bit more about that.
For example, you ask your students to discuss any topic, and at the same time you are trying to check their speech,
Their
the
usage.
grammar. Then you discuss. Of course, they don't pay attention while talking about their topic while discussing, but then you may point which mistakes they made.
Okay, good. We can also use it to teach in the same way. There are different sorts of teaching ways that we have, like the TTT, which is test, teach, test. And that is very similar to what you were just saying, where you give a topic or you give an activity and the students do it and you're sort of testing them to see where they fall in their knowledge. And then you teach according to the results that you get. And then you do the whole process over and over and over again as they're learning. Okay, great. Anyone else want to add an activity? Yesterday someone mentioned role plays. And guided role plays to covertly teach, because they are guided. There are specific things that you're asking the students to be able to use. I can give up this chair too if anyone needs it.
They are not guilty because they have their own classes and they will use all the right now.
Oh no, I don't mind people coming late at all.
It's very fun.
Very professional and stick with my coat right now. Okay, so who can tell the newcomers what we've just discussed? Pop quiz, covert, overt, what is it? Can you share with them?
It's a hidden task.
Okay, so Which one is the hidden task? Covert is the hidden task, and what's overt?
Obvious, not obvious.
Exactly, an obvious, you're obviously teaching something. Oftentimes, when I'm obviously teaching something, I'm at the board going, so let me explain, present simple. And we give examples, and it's very clear what I'm teaching. Okay, so with the communicative approach, we're just going to talk very, very, very briefly about how, more or less, how it was begun. Basically, we were looking at to make communication more effective and to make English teaching or language teaching in general more effective. Researchers were looking at how people learn a language. What do we do in order to learn it? And how, and what do people want to say? So what do they want to communicate in the language? And based on the results of these two questions, they came up with this new approach, which is obviously no longer new. Maybe about 20 years ago, maybe even 30 years ago it was new, but not right now. But anyway, so this started the communicative approach to language teaching. So we're looking at what are the language functions. And by functions, we can look at this in two ways, right? We can look at this in why are we using language? How do we use it to function? But we can also look at it in terms of the function of the language grammatically, how it is structured. So this is still important, but the focus is on activities that help students use the language in a way that helps them to convey meaning with each other or to communicate. And that's how we had the communicative approach. So I'm not arguing that this is the best approach because I think that most of the research at this point suggests that teachers should go ahead and kind of put together an approach that is based on their particular set of students, given the sociocultural implications, given where they are in terms of the learning, like are they beginning, are they intermediate, are they advanced, where are they, how old are they, etc., etc. But I think that it is very important to think about the communicative approach when teaching grammar, because grammar can be very dull, yeah? Can be very frustrating. So it's nice to have different ways to think about teaching it. So we've already talked about covert versus overt. I wanted to ask you, if you have beginning level learners, say this is secondary and above, not young learners, because we already discussed young learners, right? Remind me what young learners are more comfortable with? Games, they get it, they more internalize it, right? Maybe occasionally you'll have to explain something, but not as much. But if we started with secondary and above, for beginning levels, would we want to teach in a covert way or an overt way, grammar?
Mixture.
A mixture. Both. Okay. And do you think that you would use
Overt, more than covert.
you would use overt more than covert at beginning levels? Okay. Okay.
What color?
I would probably use, at the beginning levels, I would probably use covert more than overt. I would have overt to explain the distinctions between different grammar points and different grammar functions. But I would wait for intermediate and above to start focusing on the overt or the obvious. Or my obvious explanation, right? I'm obviously explaining it. Because I think that intermediate and above, at that point, they should theoretically have such a grasp of the language that they'll be able to understand theoretically how the grammar works. Whereas at the beginning level, you're bombarded with so much vocabulary, so many new ways to express yourself that having like a very detailed grammar lesson is like too much, a little overwhelming. Okay. And then we also have to remember this input occasionally above their level. Can anyone tell me what that is?
To give them something more difficult, more challenging.
Mm-hmm. And how much more challenging?
A bit more challenging, not too much.
Yes, well said. I can tell that you've either read the research or been in my class before. So we have this theory started by Stephen Krashen, which is the I plus 1. And basically, the I is our base knowledge. It is what we already know. And the plus 1 is plus the new information. If I put it back here, can everyone see now? Okay. So this is an acceptable level of additional information. And this would vary student by student, obviously, right? But if we do an I plus 5, what do you think happens? They won't like it. They'll feel frustrated. They may even get alienated. But what SLA research has shown, and Stephen Krashen mentioned this in his research in 1982 or 83, I think. But basically what happens is that the student regresses. They were at this level, and maybe they even go back a little bit. So we want to avoid regressing them, unless, on purpose for kicks, you do this to your students, and then maybe we need to take you to a psychologist. But we want to stick more at this level, not at this level. Okay, so that's what I mean by a little bit over their level here. Occasionally above their level. Also because obviously that stimulates it, right? If you're always doing something at a basic level, you're going to maintain your interest, right? You're not going to really be that motivated. Sometimes you need a challenge to spark your excitement in learning. Okay, so testing, yay. What does the first one say?
You cannot check present perfect if you told them present simple.
Exactly. Don't check what you haven't taught them. That's obvious, right? But occasionally, this actually links down to here, don't forget to test the test, because occasionally we accidentally slip something in there that's not on purpose. It's not like we're trying to trick them, but maybe it's a higher level and we didn't intend to, but it's there in the test. So we need to make sure by testing the test that we don't accidentally teach or test them on something we haven't taught. Okay, bullet point 2. What does that one say?
Be specific in the test.
Common knowledge.
Don't
Everybody
test
knows.
general knowledge, right. So what is... Don't give away all the answers. What is common
My
knowledge?
understanding is that you need to test grammar rather than testing some knowledge from, I don't know, the weather, geography or something. We are testing the English grammar or foreign language grammar rather than biology or history or something.
Okay, general knowledge, yes. I think this one is intending to mean common knowledge. And you are absolutely correct in that you're testing specifically grammar. But for common knowledge, it would be something like if I said, Picasso is a painter. Most of you knew that, right? You may have also had artists pop into your mind, right? But you knew who Picasso was. That's because that's part of common knowledge. That's general knowledge. This is something that we all share. This is what gets really tricky when it comes to plagiarism, because you don't have to quote common knowledge or general knowledge. But if it's not general, you do. So when do you know what's general or what's common knowledge and what's not? That's one of the difficulties we face as teachers, isn't it? Okay, so not to test general knowledge. Don't introduce new techniques in tests. Why not? Wouldn't that be a great time? You have a captive audience to try out a new activity or exercise with them.
Tests are not for teaching, they are for testing.
Okay, good. Number 1, they're not there to be guinea pigs to your new activities and experiments. And the tests are they're not for teaching. They're not teaching moments yet. After the test, and once you have looked at the results and you have figured out where the students still need work, then you have teaching moments, but not during the test. Why else?
It might add stress to
Absolutely. Imagine if you're used to seeing certain activities and then suddenly there's a completely different activity on a test that's worth half of your grade. How do you think you will respond? You'll probably get really freaked out. I know I would. I'd be traumatized. Maybe not, but I would not be happy. Also, what are we testing in tests?
knowledge.
We're testing their knowledge, and we're also testing ourselves. If we were able to convey what we were supposed to convey, if the students can really use the information that we have taught them. So did we or did we not teach them the information they were supposed to know? Okay, don't just test accuracy. Why not?
Accuracy of what?
Of the usage.
Of the usage.
It's because of the difference between English by the book and English alive.
Okay, that could be one interpretation, yeah. Actually, for me, this actually goes back to a question that Victor asked yesterday. But for me, oftentimes on the tests, I want them to do a series of activities using the target form of grammar that I want to see, that I'm assessing whether or not they know. And in those activities, sometimes they have to write their opinion in a paragraph or in a statement, and then they have to write sentences, very standard, very typical activities. What I'm looking for is their ability to communicate successfully the ideas. I'm not necessarily looking for every single word being spelled correctly. Maybe they are missing a determiner. That's okay because they conjugated the verb. And the part that I'm assessing, the part that I'm looking at specifically, that's where my focus is. And also on the meaning. So I would have a two-part focus on the meaning, their ability to communicate the message, and on the way that they communicated the message. But this is not just accuracy when you're just having them go through and you're having them conjugate verbs over and over again or choose the right whatever to match in the sentence. That's more focused on accuracy. And if you think about it, like outside of drilling students for an activity in class, how is it really helpful? You're not seeing how they can use it. Just drilling. The drilling part is great, but it's a class activity, not necessarily something that we need for the test. You can get that through the answers that they provide. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Any questions? Yeah.
Maybe you mean that we shouldn't just test accuracy in terms that we should test different skills. For example, when we test listening, check listening skills, we ignore accuracy mistakes. Spelling mistakes, grammar mistakes, we ignore. Maybe this one.
I'm talking specifically about grammar. With listening, for me, it would be slightly different. I would need to know a little bit more about the activity that you're talking about in terms of listening. But for grammar, for example, if I have them write an essay, or an essay is very long, if I have them write sentences conveying ideas, so say they had a reading, and then they had a multiple choice about the meaning of the reading, and then they had to talk about their opinion. But in their opinion section, I was focused on a grammar form that would be appropriate to use in opinion. And based on their sentences, I would be looking for whether or not they could convey the meaning of their opinion and how they conveyed the opinion. So I'd be looking at two things. And when I was mentioning earlier the accuracy, I try not to do it in a test in terms of like drills. You know, so he But these both are correct. I would rather the students produce this sentence themselves using either goes or went, depending on which one I was testing, rather than have them just fill in a blank. Does that make sense? Is that more clear? Yeah, maybe?
So it's more about rubrics, to include into rubrics not only
You want
accuracy, but the meaning as well.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. And lastly, don't forget to test the test. So we already talked about one of the reasons to make sure that you're not testing what you haven't taught, but we also want to make sure that you're testing what you intend to test. So I have before created tests with colleagues. We used to have a testing team, and I was on it, and we would create tests, and then we would give it to our colleagues to take the tests, and we'd go back and we'd grade the tests. This is before we gave them to the students, right? And one time, we actually discovered that what we were testing was not what we intended to test. And so we had to go back and rewrite it for what we were intending to test. So it's better to catch it at that stage when you have not yet given it to the students than to give it to the students and go, ha ha, sorry guys, we have another test because I messed up. So you don't want to do that. That's very embarrassing. You want to get it right the first time as much as possible. Or you don't want to have to cancel that whole section of the test because you you didn't pre-test it. Okay, so any other statements, other reasons why you might want to test the test that you can think of? No?
Evaluate your own work.
Yeah, evaluating your own work. Also looking for grammar mistakes, eh? There have been times where we've actually found in our own either misspelling or grammar mistakes or something like that in the test. And there's nothing worse than, you know, having a student come up to you in the middle of a test and go like, I don't understand this because it's the wrong word, it's like grammatically incorrect, whatever. So that's all the more reason to test the test. Hi ladies. Okay, you came at a perfect time because now we're just gonna play. There's a chair right here if you wanna sit. And chairs will appear from somewhere, I'm sure. We have a tendency to be able to make them appear. So, we're going to divide you into different groups. Ideally, what might happen is if the people who are working with secondary school students kind of work together in a group, the people who are working with young learners by our definition are learners between 7 and 12. Very young learners are under 7. So, is anyone working with very young learners? Raise your hand if you are. Under 7? Is anyone working with 7 to 12 young learners?
I tried.
You tried. Okay, just 2 of you?
Yeah.
Okay. Is anyone working with secondary school? Okay. Everyone else is working with university?
Adults.
With adults, yeah. Okay, adults. All right. I will give you something separate later because there's only 2. And we need to share the packs between the groups. So that makes this easy. We are just going to count off, and you'll just be friendly with whoever you're sitting near. And I'm going to give you a packet of different grammar games. And in this packet of different grammar games that you'll look at the group as a group, go through them all, read through them, see which ones you like, choose 2 to play, actually play. And while you're playing them, make sure that you're choosing 2 that you would like to use or adapt for your own class. While you're playing them, think of how you might adapt it for your own class. Questions? Can anyone tell me what you're supposed to do?
To choose games and play games.
How many games are you playing?
2. But
2.
you have to look through all of them.
And you have to look through all of them, that's right. And when you're playing the 2 games, what are you thinking about in your mind?
How we can
How to
adapt
adapt.
them to our own.
Very good, yes. How you're going to adapt them to your own classes or your students, whoever you're working with. Okay, so, let's have, I know, me neither. How about you 4? Yeah, this way, together. Yeah, you all, can you all be together? Okay, this table will be 1. Okay. Here's another, this is the book that, because you're so many people. Okay, let's do 4. Can somebody sit right here for me? So we can have another group of 4, please?
You think so? I'm not sure.
Be brave, or I will choose. Thank you for volunteering. Much easier when you volunteer and I don't have to volunteer you. So that's your group. Okay. 5. And the master.
What should we?
So, together, all of you. And you can all choose to volunteer. But you're welcome to borrow the book. Are you not taking cards? You're supervised. Okay, I can give you something to do though, because you saw this yesterday. Why don't we try this one too? Here, so you have more than one. Very
Walk on. Where are the options to show you? Where is how to close
Все, давай. Сейчас экзамен даю.
Listen to the radio while players practicing his karate. Memorize his words vocabulary.